Call of Duty and we have a complicated relationship. I've never really claimed to like it, and in some cases I've even professed to hate it, though it's a series I can't seem to stay away from. With the exception of Black Ops 4, I've bought every one of them at some point or other, and continue to invest a ridiculous amount of time into them as a series. For all the flaws that never seem to be addressed, and the claims it's the same Skinner box game every year, it's a series that generally has always maintained a fairly high level of quality and polish, and a solid gameplay loop that a lot of other annual franchises don't necessarily always seem to maintain. I think a lot of my enduring tolerance for the series comes down to Call of Duty 4. Up until this point, the FPS genre had heavily favoured World War II for its setting of choice. I mean, it made sense. It was a period of history that pretty much everybody is familiar with, and an enemy that has always been unambiguously evil. I don't think it's ever possible to have shot enough Nazis. In the 7 years since the release of the original Medal of Honor, across just these two series, 14 games were released, with countless others being released in the Battlefield, Wolfenstein, and Brothers in Arms series, amongst many others. Needless to say, fatigue had started to set in. People were starting to get tired of replaying the same 6-year period of history. Now, that's not to say that there aren't good games released during this period. Medal of Honor Frontline blew my mind in 2002, and I had a lot of fun with Brothers in Arms Road to Hill 30, but it was time for a change. Once the development of Call of Duty 2 had ceased in 2005, the team at Infinity Ward decided to switch focus and move over to a modern setting for the next release in the series.
Coming off Call of Duty 2, we knew we wanted to do something different for our next game. We don't agree with some critics who say that World War II as a genre is dead, but we couldn't muster the same passion for the subject that we had in our first 3 World War II games.
They decided to steer clear of referencing any real-life war, instead deciding on an entirely fictional conflict that would give them the freedom to do whatever was necessary to tell their story. Feeling that it was important to continue to convey the realism that the series had produced thus far, Infinity Ward spoke with US Marines and observed live fire exercises at a training facility. Veterans were contracted to oversee motion capture sessions and to help with the design of the AI. Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare was officially revealed in April 2007. At E3 later that year, more gameplay was revealed as well as an Xbox 360 exclusive multiplayer beta, and later a PC exclusive single player demo. As someone who was primarily a console gamer at the time, specifically on Xbox, and a casual fan of previous Call of Duty games, I jumped on the beta and didn't put it down for its entire duration. I get more into why the multiplayer was so popular later, but the hype was real, largely due in fact to the multiplayer beta. Infinity Ward were somewhat still an underdog in the industry at the time, and the PC demo had left people feeling somewhat flat about Modern Warfare.
UAV recon standing by. Enemy UAV is airborne. Our UAV is online. We've taken the lead. Airstrike standing by.
On November 5th, 2007, Infinity Ward released Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare on Xbox 360, PS3 and PC, and redefined everything about what it meant to be a first-person shooter.
Right. What the hell kind of name is Soap, eh?
The campaign opens with the player being in control of the newest member of the British SAS, John Soap McTavish. His induction to the unit serves as a tutorial and mirrors the start of the game's first proper mission. It takes the form of a training run through a cargo ship, introducing players to the various controls of the game.
Flashbang through the door. Position 4.
It's a timed course that can be run multiple times to get a better score and progress up the unit leaderboard. The game suggests a difficulty setting based on how well the player does. This can be completely ignored though, and the game started on whatever the player fancies can be changed at any point throughout. Once this is completed, the first mission begins on the actual cargo ship that the training exercise mimic. It serves as a practical assessment of the skills that were learned in the tutorial section, with the opening areas being basically identical in layout. I honestly like this approach. It doesn't feel anywhere near as tutorial-y as other games, and other than an objective marker on the on-screen compass, there's little in the way of hand-holding compared to later games in the series. That being said, Modern Warfare started, or rather further lead into, a trend of having very linear, highly scripted missions with set pieces connected by what are effectively corridors. There's nothing inherently wrong with this per se. Half-Life showed us how effective that can be. However, the series still leans on this trope a little too heavily, and nearly 2 decades later, it isn't getting any fresher. Still, Modern Warfare has an effective primary gameplay loop, and is engaging enough on a moment-to-moment basis to satisfy keeping boredom at bay. The controls are responsive and feel good, like really good. There's a reason why pretty much every first-person shooter on console now uses the COD layout for button mappings as a standard. Aiming down sights snaps satisfyingly to nearby targets, facilitating quick and reactive combat, which is necessary due to the game spawning enemies infinitely in a lot of areas until you, the player, push forward. So being able to quickly dispatch your foes is incredibly important. Talking about the controls and gameplay loop of a Call of Duty game feels at this point kind of reductive. There have been 18 mainline games at the time of writing, and nearly that again with side games, spin-offs and ports. But it feels disingenuous not to mention how good this felt in 2007 and why it set a new standard. Story shifts from the perspectives of the British SAS and the US Marines, typically alternating from mission to mission, often portraying events happening simultaneously, with the third act having both forces team up and work together to take on Zakhaev. SAS missions tend to be more focused on stealth and sneaky guerrilla warfare taking place in the background, while the US Marine side of things lean towards more open warfare and larger scale conflicts.
Suppression fire on that building. We have to move forward.
The campaign is set during a civil war in Russia between ultranationalists and its own government, with the primary antagonist being the leader of the ultranationalists, Imran Zakhaev. A separatist group under the control of al-Assad, an ally of Zakhaev, takes control of an unspecified country in the Middle East in a coup, executing the president live on national TV. This prompts the US military to get involved and swiftly order a counter-invasion. None of this is portrayed through cutscenes per se, except for a few minor ones on loading screens that kind of fill in the blanks. All major plot points are observed in first person with the player in some form of control. This leads to an excellent sense of immersion, a largely unbroken narrative, even with the shifting of characters and scenarios. The presidential execution early in the game is a great example of this. The level opens with the player being thrown in the back of a car. What follows is a short journey while the opening credits play. A broadcast discusses what's happening and indicates what is to be your fate. It's reminiscent of the monorail scene from the beginning of Half-Life and similarly effective. At the end of the journey, you're dragged from the car and summarily executed live on TV. What's probably the best example, though, takes place at the end of the game's first act. The US Marine forces headed to the capital city of wherever this is, having tracked down al-Assad to there. A radio message informs the Marines that al-Assad is suspected to have a nuclear weapon and they should probably get out of the area as quick as possible, because being around if it goes off is going to be pretty bad for everyone. While evacuating, an allied chopper gets shot down over the city and a short rescue mission takes place. On retreating to the transport helicopter with the downed pilot, the bomb goes off. What follows is a short, haunting sequence wherein the player crawls from the wreckage of their downed helicopter, to die in silence in front of a mushroom cloud that now enveloped the city. The US invasion is a bust, their own hubris ultimately being their downfall.
50,000 people used to live in the city. Now it's a ghost town.
For me, the height of the campaign is a mission midway through Act 2. A flashback to 15 years before the main plot, set on the outskirts of Pripyat and dealing with the attempted assassination of Zakhaev. Primarily a stealth-focused mission, All Gillied Up sees a young Price and Captain Macmillan sneaking through the abandoned town to get to a hotel in order to get a good vantage point to snipe from. The map is drenched in atmosphere. It does a really good job of portraying the empty and abandoned nature of the area, managing to incorporate real-life landmarks, the synonymous Ferris wheel of Pripyat Amusement Park, Alicia Hotel, and the long-abandoned Azure swimming pool. Coincidentally, the pool wasn't actually abandoned and left to decay until 1998, 2 years after the scene is supposedly set. All Gillied Up can be tackled a variety of different ways. There are no auto-fairly states per se should the player be detected, other than getting killed like you would in any other encounter. Just changing the direction of the mission from a quiet, sneak through the town, to a mad dash through chased by squads of Russians with dogs and helicopters. It gives the player a terrific sense of agency. It was a refreshing take on a boss stealth section, something many of the games in the era, and even now, tend to fall down on. Taku said that All Gillied Up was one of the best levels in video game history. Ars Technica compared the atmosphere to the Fallout series, and Games Radar called the mission a masterpiece of tension and pacing.
Let them go. Keep a low profile and hold your fire. Try to anticipate their paths. If you have to maneuver, do it slow and steady.
Modern Warfare went on to sell nearly 20 million units. That's 3 times that of its predecessor, received near universal praise and dozens of Best Game and Game of the Year awards, spawning a Nintendo DS and Wii port, and 2 sequels that went on to break further sales records for the series. Infinity Ward and Activision initially had hoped for Modern Warfare to outsell Halo 3, which released a few months prior. While this didn't happen, it wasn't far off. Performing almost as well as a first-party flagship title, especially one with the pedigree of Halo, was incredibly impressive, and considering multi-platform releases, Modern Warfare was the best-selling game of 2007. A Game of the Year version was released a year later, including the multiplayer DLC. So far, I've only really focused on the single player. Probably a little odd considering that the series is synonymous with its multiplayer. Campaign often being seen as a tacked-on afterthought by some. As alluded to earlier, the multiplayer beta on Xbox 360 a few months before release catapulted the game and Infinity Ward into the limelight. Introducing players to the RPG-esque leveling and unlock system, dedicated class creation, perks and kill streaks, all standard stuff these days, but it was pretty new at the time, at least on consoles, and added so much depth to an otherwise standard multiplayer experience. It was a level of customization that set it aside from other games, allowing the player to play their way while the phrase was associated with the shady publisher behaviour. XP is earned for getting kills, capturing objectives, etc. This in turn ranked up the player, with every level unlocking a new piece of equipment or perk that could be equipped when creating a class. Once the level cap of 55 or General had been reached, players are invited to Prestige, resetting their rank and all their gear so that they can be leveled up and unlocked again, and bestowing a new icon for the player on the scoreboard and in lobbies. With 10 levels of Prestige available, there are plenty to keep players engaged. As players rise through the ranks, various challenges become unlocked, all of which bestow additional EXP for their completion. These range from a specific number of kills with each gun, winning a number of games and calling in kill streaks, to missed challenges like dying due to falling damage. Some of these additionally unlock new camo skins for the game's weapons that the player could equip once unlocked. Gameplay itself wasn't particularly complicated. Standards of team deathmatch and free-for-all are obviously there, and a variety of objective game modes like Headquarters and Domination added some variety. The maps that are available are generally all pretty good, most of which being a small section of one of the single player maps. This meant that layers would be immediately familiar when moving from the campaign to the multiplayer, and is genuinely a really good idea. It's a shame that it's not done more often. The PC version is probably the most active at this point, thanks to custom servers and a modding community, but I had no trouble finding populated games in pretty much any mode, and the console versions all had around 1,500 people online when I checked. The fact that Modern Warfare still has an active community on all three major platforms is testament to the quality of its gameplay. At some point during the mid-2010s, I couldn't find out exactly when, a petition surfaced online requesting the remaster of Modern Warfare. This gained significant traction and evidently piqued Activision's interest as they set Raven Software the task of developing a remaster, with Infinity Ward taking an executive producer role. Raven had previously aided in the development of several other Call of Duty titles from Black Ops onwards, and prior to their acquisition by Activision, had a strong repertoire of releases under their belts. Their priority was to bring the game to modern standards in both the visual and audio departments, while leaving the core gameplay unchanged as much as possible. This was largely a success. Some minor tweaks to dialogue and animations are about the only noticeable changes from a gameplay perspective. Honestly, I didn't even realise these tweaks were a thing until looking up the development history for this video. The game was brought to a level you'd expect from the 8th console generation. It looks pretty good and runs well on all platforms. I don't really know what else to say about that. Raven stayed consistent with the original art direction and just upped the fidelity. Modern Warfare Remastered isn't without its share of controversy. Activision made the decision to feature the game with the latest mainline title, Infinite Warfare, bumping the price up to $79.99 for the base or legacy version, and requiring the Infinite Warfare disc to be in the console for DRM reasons. Players wanting to grab the top edition to get the season pass as well would be forking out $119.99, which is all kinds of ridiculous. This, understandably, upset a lot of people, and dozens of petitions sprung up online requesting that the game be released as a standalone product. 8 months after launch, Activision relented and released the remaster as a standalone, but digitally and on disc. But it was priced at $39.99 and didn't include the DLC. Speaking of the DLC, Activision decided that the original game's DLC, the Variety Map Pack, wasn't to be included in either the bundled or standalone versions, and therefore was sold separately. Generally, part of the appeal of a remaster is that it contains all of the release and post-release content of the original. Additionally, Activision decided to add loot boxes to the multiplayer in the form of supply drops. At launch, they only contained cosmetic items, which was bad enough, but a few months after release, new weapons that were not present in the original game were patched in.
Team 2 in position at the perimeter. Waiting on you to kill the tower. Over. Roger. So, plant the charges. Go.
All of this aside though, Modern Warfare Remastered had generally favourable reviews and received 8 out of 10s across the board. Loot box and DLC bullshit aside, the remaster is probably my favourite way to experience the game now. The multiplayer still has plenty of people around due to being on far more relevant consoles, and the game still looks and plays great. Call of Duty 4 is the reason why I still go back to Call of Duty every year, on the off chance that its particular brand of lightning has struck again. I did briefly with Black Ops 2, probably the only other game in the series that I've sunk as much time into. Since then though, it hasn't even come close. It single-handedly laid the groundwork for how many of the entries in the genre behaved for a generation. Whether or not that's a good thing is up for debate. Arguably, it could be blamed for the endless derivatives and subpar knockoffs that lingered around the 7th console generation, following a trend rather than setting their own. Modern Warfare is still worth playing today. The campaign is just as tight, focused and engaging as it was in 2007, and its multiplayer community still thrives. If somehow you haven't played it yet, and find yourself wearying towards where the series went, then you owe it to yourself to go back and check out the genre-defining classic. You won't be disappointed.